Hey guys, I'm the Sky Spire, and welcome to a completely different kind of video. You see, indie games have been exploding recently, like Five Nights at Freddy's, but I never really got into it. All the free Rule 34 is good enough for me. But interesting thing about Five Nights at Freddy's is how the game works. You see, the games themselves are very ambiguous. They never feel the need to explain tons of plots. Rather, they just want to give you legitimate scares. The gameplay is nice and all, but where the series really shines is in its story. Besides the random phone calls you get, the game expects its fanbase to piece the plot together through a series of elaborate hints. Perfect material for a specific group of YouTubers, but that's besides the point. Because, well, you guys probably came here for the other indie game that blew up recently, and that game is Undertale. Now this game, trust me, it's really hard to say anything about this game that hasn't already been said in the 5 months or so that it's been out. But after its September release, people have been all over the game, myself included, with its quirky humor, its RPG gameplay mixed in with the exhilarating difficulty and satisfaction of a bullet hell game, and to top it off, a beautifully crafted plot. Undertale is many people's game of 2015. Granted, I'm a bit biased since the game is heavily based off of Earthbound, which I lived for since I was a wee lad, but hey. Actually, two of the biggest similarities between the two games are lovable cast and lovable humor. So that really does boil down to the many characters that make Undertale what it is, huh? Well, we've got the loving motherly goat mom Toriel, the fish warrior who's both competitive and caring, Undyne, the loud flamboyant skeleton Papyrus, the Kyriabu Alphys, and that flower. Go die, Flowey. Well, just play the game. It's pretty cheap, it's not insanely long, and it's definitely worth your time and money. But if you've either played the game before or don't mind spoilers, then allow me to continue on. If anyone told you that there was this one specific character that stands out among the cast, let me tell you, it's not hard to pick the face. Because while each and every character in Undertale has their own endearing character traits, there's one character in particular that manages to stand out far more than the rest. I won't beat around the bush too much. After all, you probably just want the bare bones. Yes, it's Sans. Of course it's Sans. Where do you begin with the guy? Well, he's the brother of Papyrus, but unlike the eccentricity of Papyrus, Sans is just lazy. More on that later in the video. Sans and Papyrus have caused many an animation, comic, fanfiction, you name it. And it's pretty much because they have a relationship which almost mirrors a stereotypical relationship between dorm mates. But unfortunately, this has been said over and over, hasn't it? The Undertale fanbase absolutely adores Sans. He's almost considered the source of the witty humor that the game has to offer, and everyone already knows this. Which is why we're gonna look at a different aspect of Sans. Remember when I mentioned Five Nights at Freddy's and how the games expect you to piece pieces of the plot together for your theorizing brains because of a lack of information? Well, out of all the theorizing to be done in this game, the majority of it has to do with the numbskull himself. I love puns with a deep passion, guys! So, what are we doing today? Well, we're going to take a good hard look at this character, talking about potential information that we don't know about him, digging through genius design choices in-game, and all in all, seeing what there is to appreciate about the guy is what we're doing today. Not necessarily theorize about him based off of evidence in the game, but more so point out many of the details of Sans that others may not have noticed. You may learn something about Sans or even gaming that you didn't know before. Jokey talk, deep talk, philosophical talk, get ready for the works. Also, while I am quite a few days late, I do want to dedicate this video to one of my closest friends, Ari, whose birthday passed a while ago. While you'll be hearing more about Sans than anything else, I do hope you enjoy all the ridiculous stuff I'm about to blurt out. And without further ado, it's time to have a good time. Or appreciate the bad ones. Let's start off simple and talk about his character. Sans loves sleeping on the job and taking tons of breaks. He also loves puns. And because of my ridiculous affinity for puns, you can probably guess what my face looked like when he pranks you with a whoopee cushion and makes his first pun. Judging by the fact that Sans performs at the MTT Resort, Sans may even be a full-fledged comedian. Bravo, he deserves it. He's not fat, he's big-boned, and he wears a hoodie that bears a resemblance to the one I've been wearing non-stop for the past 2 months or so. And I only just realized that while writing this script. The pupils in his eye sockets are an interesting topic, as they sometimes disappear completely when he's acting ominous and when he gets serious. Yeah, let's bring up that disorder later. He likes science fiction and loves to drink ketchup. Based off of possible evidence that we'll come to later, it's entirely possible that Sans came from a scientific background. A specific bit of dialogue really slaps that theory right into your face, but there is more to support it. Thing is, you really need to think about it to know about it, since by default, Sans is pictured as such a joker. His first impression is a huge impression to say the least, but to make sure the humor doesn't get stale, you need to get a little weird with your ideas. Like, I don't know, walking in the complete opposite direction of Grillby's and somehow getting there. Shortcut you say? Yeah, I got past it, but after all the stuff that we're gonna talk about, I think you guys might think of that as something more. You see, that's not the only unexplainable thing Sans does. He also mysteriously is able to stack 29 hot dogs on your head. Nah, I'm not gonna act like some insane basement conspiracy theorist where every single thing is suspicious. But as for Grillby's, I would think Sans would just go there to order some spare ribs, am I right? But as for the shortcuts, we'll call them that, although they're a lot more akin to teleporting. Sure, with all the goofy details in this very Earthbound-esque game, knowing a shortcut to his favorite bar so he can order some spare ribs is fine. But what about the King's Castle? You've gotten near the end of the game. You're approaching the final battle. Oh yeah, that Eldritch Abomination. But as you walk through the final halls before meeting with King Asgore, you run into... Sans? You've met so many new characters, big and small, and just came out of an entire plot arc that featured demonic talk show host Robo Girahim, and we meet up with Sans out of all people? It's almost like they want to give Sans a lazy, boring character, but at the same time make him do stuff like this that forces him to stand out so much. Back to this hall in a second, I want to quickly touch on one of the two things that gives this game a whole new layer of depth. There are two things about Undertale that make it stand out from other similar adventures in more ways than you might think, and they kind of play off of each other. The first of these, though, is basically the main selling point of the game, sparing enemies. It's pretty well known by now that you're able to fight enemies and kill them, but if you go through an elaborate set of actions, you can also spare the enemy without fighting it. If you go through the whole game sparing everyone, you'll be considered a good person, since you really just don't want to kill these beloved characters anyways. On the bad side, you don't gain any EXP points to raise your level, or love, so you'll have to go through the game acting as what you started as, an innocent child. You can also do a mix of killing and sparing, but if you kill everyone in sight, you won't have such a good time. Anyways, I'll talk about the other thing that makes Undertale stand out in a bit, but for now, back to that hall. This hall is known by a couple of people as the Judgment Hall. Sans will appear in front of you to block your way, and he will literally judge your actions on your journey. Turns out that if you got any EXP to gain love, that would have been the wrong choice. EXP stands for execution points, and love stands for a level of violence. Based off of that, Sans will judge how bad of a person you are before you move on. Yeah, Undertale loves the idea of killing being straight up bad. Of course, you can kill an enemy to gain EXP and become a more potent fighter, but is it really worth that much to kill someone's father? Someone's girlfriend? Someone's brother? Oh, jeez. Alright, I guess I'll have to address this at some point or another if we're going to end up on the other side of the spectrum. Now, let's say you didn't kill anybody. Bravo, you're not a bad person. And whether you'll use Asgore's soul to escape or you'll let Asgore take your soul for the monster's freedom, Sans knows you'll make the right choice. From there, you go fight Asgore and then have a drug intake, which this game considers to be one of its 3 final bosses. But let's say you choose the path of genocide. The path of being a silent marauder who goes out of their way to kill everything and everyone in sight. The game wants to make note of how awful that is. The fact that you're choosing a path that you can expect will have bad consequences and you're going through with it anyways, that's bad. Because of how evil you act, can you even be considered human? The answer is no. You're not considered a human, and because of how nice we know monsters can be, we can't call you a monster either. But all you're doing is going out of your way to not spare, but kill every innocent creature you see. Maybe you don't know the backstory behind some characters, but I could never bring myself to hurt Goat Mom. And Undyne! You see the story from her perspective even more than you do than in the pacifist route, with her acting like the true heroine. And even if she may fall, she is willing to use the last of her energy to make sure you don't hurt anyone else. It's really meaningful. But what really sets the effects of genocide into motion are, like I said, the death of a beloved brother. Oh, Papyrus, I'm sorry! Even if you somehow manage to bring yourself to killing every monster you come across, Papyrus is a different story. Sans even literally warns you that if you decide to fight Papyrus, you're going to have a bad time. And that is no exaggeration, holy crap. As Undyne said, Papyrus is such an innocent guy. He may try to act tough and wanting to capture humans and being in the Royal Guard is his dream, but Undyne knows full well that he's just too much of a sweetheart to do something like that. Delve into the world of Undertale SFMs if you want to know just how much his kind-heartedness and reputation, along with Sans' really affected everyone. Well, it's enough to break the hearts of anyone who knew and loved Papyrus in or out of the game. All the spaghetti, all the bone stressel, all the flirting. But the one affected by this the most has to be his brother, of course. The genocide route loses Undertale's quirky humor, and Sans literally does not appear for the rest of the game. And you might not care. I mean, you're a soulless killer. What's one skeleton gonna do to you, right? You can progress through your adventure just fine, killing everything in sight, and everyone may try their hardest to stop you, but to no avail. Toriel dies, which lets the player know that what's to come is gruesome. Papyrus dies, which sets many effects of the genocide run into motion since you've killed a beloved friend, partner, and brother. Undyne dies, and the fact that you cut down her legitimate determination lets you know the gravity of your evil. Mediton dies, which makes you question whether you are interested in saving monsters, saving humans, or killing them both. You can slowly feel your sins crawling on your back, and there is a point where the amount of your sins and the full gravity of them reaches a climax, when Sans gives you his proper judgment. When you make it to the Hall of Judgment after committing genocide, you know you're in for some punishment, and Sans upholds his part of the deal for you. You kill his brother, you're gonna have a bad time. Let's go! Oh man! This piece of music right here has exploded over the past couple of months. The battle theme that plays when Frisk fights Sans is called Megalovania and has been all over the internet. But whether it's because of how head-bangingly awesome it sounds, the fact that it plays during one of the most important fights in the game, or that the homeless guy down the street might be dancing to Megalovania, you know that this song is a huge deal. It actually originated in an Earthbound hack made many years ago. I actually knew both about the hack and Megalovania back then, along with the fact that they were made by some guy called Radiation. Wait, they're the same person? As I was saying, Sans, who is the literal weakest enemy in the game with no execution points or level of violence, makes the choice to stop you right here. He doesn't have any EXP because, well, he classed his way through life, never needing to go into a fight. But this guy, who can only be described as such a lazybones, and is yet the one who judges your moral decisions, makes the choice to stop you right here. But as Undyne and Mediton said, it's not so much that they don't think you should be let through, it's that they can't let you continue. Undyne makes it clear that you are a danger to both monsters and, when you reach the surface, humanity as well, and her being the true heroine and captain of the King's Royal Guard must stop you. Mediton won't be able to achieve his true dream of becoming a star of a comedian if he doesn't have a human audience to entertain, so he also has a personal motive. And it really is in dire crises when your life is on the line that the real truth comes out, doesn't it? But what about Sans? He's just a skeleton, isn't he? He doesn't have a huge connection to the fate of monsters and humans, right? Well, that's what makes the fight so awesome. On the surface level, it's just a fight between a kid and a skeleton. But really, Frisk killed his brother and took everything away from all of his friends, and Frisk will pay. But is Frisk really the one to blame? Now's a good time to talk about the other thing I wanted to mention that makes Undertale stand out. It's a huge fourth wall breaker, the existence of alternate timelines. Have you ever gone through a game, saved your progress, proceeded to die, or do something dumb enough that you just had to reset from where you last saved and continue again from there? I know I've done my share of that when it comes to Pikmin, but in the real world, that would be called time traveling. You would be making actions, but if you aren't happy with them, you would instead go back in time and change your actions, effectively making a new timeline. Time is a ridiculous topic to talk about though, so I won't go too deep into it. But that's the general gist. Undertale has a plot of its own, but it loosely ties this idea into its plot, like characters saying something different the second time around or something. And yes, a concept as alien and out of this world as this ties into the seeming simpleton that is Sans. If you listen to his Judgment Hall monologue and then reset before he begins talking about it, Sans will realize that you're acting as if you've heard this spiel before. He then tells you a password, and then another password, and basically you have to go through a ridiculous series of steps that rewards you with being able to go to his bedroom. But getting in bed with the coolest guy on the block isn't what we're focused on here. No, there's something much odder. Don't you find it weird enough already that Sans actually came up with a specific process for someone to go through just in case he suspected them of being a time traveler? Yeah, he is the only, or at least one of the very few characters who are fully aware of time travel, because once you use it in front of him, he does ask you to go through a process he thought up to validate your not-so-normal ability. The explanation? Well, remember when I mentioned that he came from a scientific background? This can be explained by the quantum physics book and a lot of the sciencey dialogue in the battle against him that talks about the time-space continuum. But if you think that's incriminating evidence, Mr. Wright, just take a look at this.